Coming up.
Coming up.
I got blood here.
There's blood all over.
Is there anybody else in the house, ma'am? What? Is there anybody else in the house?
I don't know.
What's going on? Okay.
I just wish I was there for them that day. I wish I was there to grab them before this all happened.
On June 13th, 2022 at 1:40 p.m., police arrived at a suburban home in Round Lake Beach, Illinois. After receiving a heartbreaking 911 call from a mother named Debra Karels, she was the mother of 3 young children. Inside the house, officers found a lot of blood, but the victims had no clear signs of a struggle or visible injuries. The first child, 5-year-old Bryant Karels, was found lying in his bed in the smallest bedroom. His face looked peaceful, as if he were just sleeping, but his body was cold and still. His siblings, 3-year-old Cassidy and 2-year-old Gideon, were also found in their beds, lifeless and motionless, just like their brother. Today, we'll dive into the heartbreaking and chilling case of Deborah Karels and the unthinkable murder of her innocent children. Before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss any updates on our latest true crime stories. Debra Karels was the mother of 3 and was going through a contentious divorce with Gideon Karels, the children's biological father and the primary suspect in their deaths. She had primary custody, while Gideon was granted supervised visitation. On June 13, 2022, Deborah agreed to let the children spend time with him at his home in Round Lake Beach, Illinois. When she returned later that day to pick up her children, Gideon was gone, and the house was eerily quiet. Feeling something was wrong, she walked inside and found her 3 children lying lifeless in their beds. In shock and horror, she called the police right away.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
Camden Lane. My kids, my husband, kids.
Okay, repeat the address for me one more time.
It's Camden Lane.
Okay, verify what town?
Round Lake Beach, Illinois,
Okay.
60073.
Okay, what's the phone number you're calling from? Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
I came home to take the kids, and they're all on the bed, and they are dead.
Okay, all right. How many children?
3.
Okay, one moment.
As the police searched the house, they found a suicide note written by Gideon Karels, indicating that he was responsible for the vile murders and had fled the scene. Immediately, the Round Lake Beach Police Department issued an all-points bulletin with a description of Gideon Karels and his vehicle, a red Nissan Maxima. Not long after, police officers located Karels driving along Interstate 57, about 30 miles from the crime scene. Illinois State Police were alerted and joined local law enforcement in the pursuit. When they tried to pull him over, Gideon Karels refused. Instead, he hit the gas and a high-speed chase began. The pursuit lasted nearly 17 minutes. Karels sped dangerously down the highway, weaving through traffic and pushing his car to the limit. The police stayed close, coordinating their moves to block him off. They intended to end the chase without putting others at risk.
Steel bridge coming up. Continue. Vehicles off the roadway. Vehicles off the roadway here at, he came all the way down, sorry. Water Street in Duncan. Water Street, Duncan.
Gideon Karels eventually lost control of his car and crashed on the interstate. Police vehicles rushed in, boxing him in from all sides. With weapons drawn, officers approached carefully, ordering the suspect to get out of the car. They later found Karels sitting still in the driver's seat, dazed but clearly alive. Officers moved in quickly, easily cuffing Gideon Karels without resistance. The firefighter arrived, checked his injuries, and helped him out of the wrecked car. Karels was first taken to a nearby hospital for evaluation, then transferred to another hospital, where police kept him in custody overnight. On the hospital bed, Gideon Karels lay with bandages wrapped around his wrists. Police revealed that earlier that day, before fleeing onto the highway, he had tried to take his own life, but failed. That explained the large amount of blood found inside his home. When the detectives assigned to interrogate him walked in and started asking questions, Jason calmly confessed everything, explaining how and why he had killed his children. Throughout his entire confession, Jason showed little to no remorse for the unthinkable crime he had committed against his own children. The only pity he expressed was for himself. During his interrogation at the hospital, he talked about how he once dreamed of becoming a police officer, but had to give up that dream because of his family. He blamed his wife and children for holding him back, painting himself as the victim in his own twisted narrative. Jason continued shifting blame to his ex-wife, describing their marriage as toxic and unfair.
Since we know each other, I've always complained about how she makes up things to justify how she treats me. And I put up with it because I have no self-worth. And she's always like manipulated me and like put me down and been mean to me. And the only time like I've really been mean to her is when it's like I'm not even being mean. It's more like it's like she says something mean or rude that's not true to hurt me, so I say something mean back because I know if I say something mean, she'll tell me the truth. It's really weird. It was a relationship, but I was depressed a lot, but I didn't always feel until she got married.
When he claimed that his wife constantly belittled him and made him feel worthless, insisting it contributed to him losing his sanity, the detectives pressed for specific examples of the hurtful things she had said. They hoped to understand what could have driven a seemingly normal man to commit such a monstrous act. The only incident he could recall, however, was her scolding him once for coming home late. Throughout his entire confession, Jason showed little to no remorse for the unthinkable crime he had committed against his own children. The only pity he expressed was for himself. Even in the face of undeniable guilt, Jason clung to the belief that he was the victim, refusing to take full responsibility for his actions.
It just felt like she would try to paint me. She would paint me as this bad, terrible person to make herself feel better for how she felt about herself.
Okay.
I also wanted to be a psychologist. That was my third dream job.
You guys are married still, from my understanding, or
Separated.
you guys are separated but legally still married?
I found out the day before yesterday that she cheated on me and left me for another guy the day after my birthday.
Okay.
And then she's been keeping the kids from me, but she claims that she hasn't. But the truth is I thought she was keeping the kids from me, but the truth is she was seeing somebody instead of like calling me with the kids. And you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
It was eventually revealed that Jason Karels' shocking actions were triggered by discovering his wife had been cheating on him just one day after his birthday. While his feelings of betrayal and heartbreak were understandable, they did not justify the terrible revenge he took on his wife. It was clear that Jason had let his bruised ego take control and care only about his hurt feelings rather than the well-being of his kids. In his twisted mind, he thought it was the right thing to do to take the life of his children, since their mother was having an affair, and thus she was neglecting them. Though these claims later proved to be baseless by the court, to the heartless killer, the mother deserved to be with their children. The children were better off with him in what he called a better place than this cruel life. In that moment of despair, Jason Karels made the grim decision to snuff his 3 children. He then attempted to take his own life so he could be with them forever. On top of that, the night before committing the brutal murders, he spoke on the phone with his wife, Debra Karels. Detectives believe that conversation was the breaking point for him. Although there was no argument between the separated couple, something his wife said triggered him. After hanging up, he spiraled into a mental breakdown, which led him to kill his 3 children. Jason's cruelty didn't end with the murders. To inflict even more pain on his supposed cheating wife, he left behind a note, which was filled with blame and accusations, holding her responsible for the tragic outcome. "I'm sorry, I love them too much to leave them behind. You lied to me. If I can't have them, neither can you."
don't know why I thought this was okay. I don't know.
Okay.
I've never had these kind of thought processes before. Something just like, I honestly think it's, something snapped in me because like I couldn't handle being cheated on, and I couldn't handle being away from my kids so much.
Jason Karels' goal was clear. He wanted to ensure Deborah would never have custody of their children again, and he chose the most drastic way possible.
Steve Newton, NEWTON, Chief Deputy with the Lake County Coroner's Office. We did conduct autopsies this morning on the 3 children, and I just received word the 3rd one has been completed, and that the preliminary cause of death in all 3 children is consistent with drowning. Drowning.
The chief deputy did his best to maintain composure while delivering the shocking news. The public was left baffled by Jason Karels' cruelty and outraged by the injustice the children faced. Now, everyone definitely wants to know the full truth of what happened that day. Let's get back to the interview at the hospital.
Kind of walk me through today, Jay. No, don't be sorry. Just kind of walk me through today, kind of what was going on. How were the kids? Were they joyful, playful?
They were awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like frustrating.
Like this was yesterday and the day before.
What was?
I did everything I did. I started doing this morning at 1 in the morning.
So 1 in the morning is when everything happened?
Yes, sir.
Jason admitted that around 1 p.m. he began carrying out his plan. Meanwhile, the children were watching TV, cheerful and comfortable in their father's home, unaware of the catastrophic fate that awaited them.
I started giving them a bath, and for some reason I said we're going to do it one by one, and I did one by one, and then I tried to...
The first victim was 2-year-old Gideon, whom Jason brutally drowned in the bathtub. To prevent the older children from seeing, he locked the bathroom door and wouldn't let them inside. One by one, he carried out the same horrible act on his other children. After killing all 3, Jason redressed them and placed their bodies on a futon mattress in the computer room to dry off, as if nothing had happened. He then tried to commit suicide, saying he wanted to be with children. But in the end, Jason Karels was too much of a coward to do so. At the hospital, he confessed the most messed up thing about the murderer's thinking process.
And here's the messed up part about it all is like, I didn't realize what I was doing to them, and I didn't realize what I was doing to myself either. But I think subconsciously I did, like to myself, because then after that was done, I got so nervous, because I knew I was next.
The father of 3 only grasped the full weight of the situation when he realized he was next in line to die. This statement completely contradicted everything Jason had claimed earlier, that he loved his children too much and wanted to be with them in the afterlife. Jason Karels cared only about his hurt feelings. While he lay alive in the hospital, it was his children who paid the ultimate price for his selfish decision. But his wickedness and pathetic nature didn't end there. When one of the officers pressed him for details about his suicide attempt, Jason revealed another shocking truth.
Where'd you try to that?
In the downstairs, there's a bathroom door and a closet door right next to the stairs. And I blacked out, and then I woke up, and the door had come off the hinges, and the extension cord had kind of sliced the door in half a little bit.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get an understanding of how it was that, because doorknobs are, low, right? Usually when something from like...
Well, that's why it was over the door.
Up over the door?
Yeah,
and then you were...
And I also...
Was there a chair?
I was low enough that I could drop to my knees, because I have a problem with I almost drowned when I was a kid, so I can't stand feeling like I can't breathe, so I have to be able to... I was hoping I would black out before I couldn't breathe, if that makes sense.
From his confession, the police learned that Jason Karels had nearly drowned as a child and grew up with a deep fear of suffocation. To avoid that terrifying sensation, he chose a cowardly method to hang himself, hoping he would pass out before feeling the full effect of strangulation. At some point, Jason passed out, but he didn't die. Instead, he woke up and found himself lying on the floor, disoriented, unsure how long he'd been unconscious. He felt like his body was shutting down, his mind torn between fighting to live and giving in. A voice in his head told him to let go and join his children. But no matter how much he tried, his body refused to comply. Later on, he made several more attempts, but none of his chosen methods was extreme enough to put his life to the final end. He was terrified of the pain, fully knowing how awful dying felt, as he had once experienced a near-death moment as a child. And yet, he forced his own children to endure the same nightmare. And if you think we've reached the bottom end of this man's evil, then you're wrong. There's still more. According to the police interrogation's information, after committing the unthinkable, Jason sat down, lit a cigarette, and pulled out his phone. As if nothing had happened, he opened Hearthstone, a digital card game, and started playing. There was no panic, no remorse, just a man casually distracting himself. In his own words, he wasn't just calm, he seemed disturbingly detached, as if what he had done was no different from any ordinary day. It's hard for the detectives to comprehend that kind of detachment and apathy of Jason Karels. Just when it seemed the story couldn't get any darker, Jason Karels sat down for a second interview with detectives at the Lake County Jail after being transported from the hospital. His voice quieter than before, but his words were far more detailed and far more disturbing. He recounted that after his failed suicide attempt, he simply went outside for a cigarette. He stood there for about 10 minutes, smoking in silence. When he returned, he began dressing the children. He put a diaper on the youngest, underwear on the older ones, and pajamas on all three. Afterward, he carefully tucked them into their beds, pulling the blankets up to their chests. He kissed each one gently on the forehead. He claimed he wanted them clothed when they were found, insisting he didn't want them to be naked wherever they were going. At least, that's the justification he gave himself. In the second interview, Jason also went on and on about how death continued to escape him. He described how, in the bathroom, he made yet another attempt to end his life, but each time the wounds on his wrists began to close, stopping him. Frustration consumed him. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape responsibility. He couldn't control his own fate the way he had controlled theirs. It's unsettling to think how desperately he tried to avoid accountability, yet nothing went according to his twisted plan. Reality refused to let him slip away that easily. As strange as that may sound, his survival meant that he would have to face justice. There would be no easy way out for him. Had he died, his twisted plan would have worked, and his family would have been left with no answers, only grief and darkness. In December 2023, justice was finally served. Jason Karels was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of his children. He pleaded guilty but mentally ill and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Prosecutors didn't hold back, describing his actions as brutal, evil, and calculated. They pointed out how he used his own innocent children as pawns in a twisted scheme of revenge against their mother, a plan fueled by hatred and selfishness. Bryant, 5, Cassidy, 3, and Gideon, 2, were not just names in a tragic case. They were bright, loving children who touched everyone around them. Bryant was a playful and protective older brother, known for his love of video games and his gentle heart. Cassidy, tough yet sweet, had an infectious laugh that could light up a room. And little Gideon, the youngest, was the baby of the family, adored by all. Each of them was full of life, with futures that were cruelly stolen. For their mother, the pain was beyond words. She had trusted him, their own father. He had looked her in the eye and promised he would never harm their children. It was the only reassurance she had, the only thing that gave her a shred of peace. But now, that trust was shattered, leaving her world in ruins. Over and over she replayed her decisions, haunted by the thought that she had let him near them. No sentence could undo what had been done. No justice could ever fill the unbearable void left by the loss of her 3 children. And now she is forced to go on living with nothing but their memories to cling to. Do you think justice really served in Jason Karels' case? He got life in prison, but does that truly make up for what happened? 3 innocent children are gone. A mother is left with unbearable grief, and the man who was supposed to protect them became their worst nightmare. What makes someone commit such a horrifying act? Was it a sudden break from reality, or did years of anger, resentment, and emotional turmoil build up to this moment? More importantly, how do we stop tragedies like this from happening? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to receive more true crime stories from our channel. Until next time, stay safe out there.